Hi, I'm Holly. See? And this is the last video. Well, actually, it's the last video in the series. I do have some supplemental videos for you. One is uh, advanced techniques. There's some talks that other people have given I hoped would inspire you, and also troubleshooting. And, if there's anything else that you're interested in, just leave a note in the comments, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. And if you're interested in continuing this sort of work, well, check out our website at www.storyformscience.com, and you'll see our offerings, courses and workshops and consulting. But for now, it's the last video. And in our Storyform template, the very last square is called Better World. And that's the title of this video. And my question is it a better world? Well, let me tell you a story. It was about 3 years ago, and I was teaching a course in science communication at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with my colleague, Adam Steinberg. He's a visual artist. And we had just finished doing 3-minute talks. And, we had gotten feedback right where you are now. And we got an invitation for the researchers in the course to do their 3-minute talks in a public venue as a part of the Wisconsin Science Festival. So we said, yeah, sure. So we got scheduled on a Saturday night at 8:30 in a coffee shop downtown. This is downtown Madison, right on the square across from the state capitol. So I went early on that night to kind of, check out the setup. And, I was surprised because somehow I was expecting that they would have a room for us, sort of off the coffee shop somewhere, that had maybe 30 chairs in it, a rather spacious room, and that had a door to it. But that's not what I found. The space they assigned us was the space that was there right when you came into the coffee shop. In fact, when you came in the coffee shop, you had to pass the space in order to go in there and order stuff and whatever. And every time someone came in, the door opened, you could hear all the street noise from Saturday downtown in Madison, Wisconsin, and a big flood of cold air came into the space. On the other side of the space, the one that was next to the coffee shop proper, the only thing that was keeping the space from the coffee shop was not a wall, but a partition. And this was a big coffee shop. And it was Saturday night, so there was lots of talking and laughing and shouting, and all of this was plainly audible in the space. And the space was little. There was a little table up in the front with a microphone on it, and then maybe 15 chairs, all squished together. And I thought to myself, this is not good. Because if people can't hear the researchers talk, then they aren't going to want to listen. And if they're not going to listen, then they're going to get up and go home, or they're going to go into the coffee shop where more interesting things are happening for them. And if they're not going to listen and be there, it means that the researchers will be talking to no one, which is, it's a gigantic waste of their time, and also it's disheartening. So the event starts 8:30, and the first speaker starts to speak. And when the first speaker starts, we have maybe 5 people sitting in the chairs. But by the end of the first speaker, and that was like 3 or 4 minutes, all of the chairs were taken, and people were starting to move down the chairs along the sides. I guess you would call them the aisles, but they weren't really aisles. By the end of the second speaker, a whole bunch of people had crowded around in the back because there was no other room in this little space. And the crowd got to be so big that when people would come into the coffee shop and actually try to go into the coffee shop, well, all the spillover made it hard to do that. And when they came in, they'd say, what's going on? And the people in the back would go, shh, quiet. I'm trying to listen. It was so crowded that I was a moderator, so I was supposed to go up to the front after every talk and then call on people to ask questions for the researchers, and then they'd answer them. But I couldn't squeeze up to the front. So I dragged the chair from the coffee shop and I set it up near the back, and I stood on the chair and shouted, and people raised their hands if they wanted to ask a question. I'd call on them, and then they would shout their question to the researcher and they'd answer it. And so it went through the whole event. When it was over, there was, this huge round of applause, and then people stayed around. They stayed around and they gathered around researchers and they asked them more questions and waited in line to ask them questions. Now, I've told you about one event, but the truth is that there were many events, because Adam and I taught this course every year, and every year when the 3-minute speeches were ready, we would have researchers go out and to get practice to give them in various places. And some of these places were just as chaotic as the one I've just described. For example, every year they would give talks on the floor of the Discovery Center, which is a huge building where there's research on the top, and then there's a sort of an outreach center on the bottom. And once a month there was Science Saturday, wall-to-wall science activities, kids running around screaming. Our science researchers were there, and they were giving their talks to whomever wanted to sit and listen. Our researchers gave talks in a brewery. We weren't even there where people were drinking beer. Instead, they put us in the back. There were no chairs. They were leaning against, kegs right by the fermenter. Our scientists give talks at a corn maze, like at a farm 30 miles outside of Madison. This corn maze, the kind of places you go around Halloween for hay rides and drinking cider. Our scientists were there giving their talks. And in every single event, and I kid you not, at every event, no matter how chaotic, people would gather around, listen to these talks, and then hang around afterwards to ask follow-up questions. Now, I don't know about you, but I find this astonishing. And the reason it happens, and always happened, is that if people understand the science, they're intrigued, they're engaged, they're interested. And if they understand the science, then they want to learn more. And they feel connected to the researcher. Well, now you've got to talk. You've got a 3-minute talk. And I encourage you to go out and give that talk wherever and whenever the opportunity presents. For your own practice, yes, of course, but mostly because people will then understand a little bit about your research, and they will be engaged, and they will be interested and captivated, and they will feel connected to you. And if they feel connected to you, they will trust you. And if they trust you, well, they will be more likely to trust science in general. And that is the better world. This is the last video. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. I want to thank you for the time and effort you put in to craft your talk. And I want to thank you for being open-minded enough to think about doing things in a different way, and to be interested in using story in your science communication. Let's stay in touch.